Hey guys and gals, it's Logan Freeman with the LiveFree Investors Podcast. I interview investors and business owners who share investment advice so you too can live free. Today, I'm talking to a good friend of mine, someone who I really respect in the industry. This time last year, we were able to meet in person out in California, and I really got to know you, one-on-one, which was really cool. Got to sit through some nice panels together, and we've just continued to build this relationship. Spencer Hilligoss. Spencer, in a few sentences, man, tell us who you are and what you do.
Yeah, and just for everybody listening, thank you so much, Logan. I was joking with Logan at the beginning of this for everybody, guys, that like I put on a collared shirt, put in hair product, started Friday 8 a.m. Pacific time, which in my corporate career is not a big order. In my real estate career, that's a tall order. So I'm half joking with a nugget of truth in there. But thank you so much for having me, Logan. It's really a pleasure to be here, man.
Yeah, well, thank you for being here. And with two young kids, I know how good mornings go. So I appreciate you making it happen.
Down to the moment we hit record on here, there was screaming in the background.
So, oh yeah.
So for me, just quick background, I'm based out here in the Bay Area, California, specifically in Alameda, if you know the little island out here across from San Francisco.
Yep.
Had a 13-year career in technology companies across 5 software companies doing leadership roles.
Yep.
So it was a very corporate mainstream style of career.
Absolutely.
I was basically just chasing the narrative that so many other folks do in the broken Silicon Valley playbook, which
sure.
is really, let me go find an early stage company, get some equity in that thing, and hopefully a big exit will wipe my financial obligations and sins of the past clean. And kind of woke up because of hardship and also with some informed from some learnings in my early life and tragedy from family, which we don't have to go into necessarily, but I would just say that it's amazing how much you learn once you open your mind on the investing front and what's possible for just the average person, beyond the 401k and beyond just making a W-2 income that is heavily taxed and all those wonderful things. So just happy to share that education with folks about how we're able to now, I'm now able to be a full-time real estate investor, helping other folks do the same, even though, they still have their impressive, amazing careers that they're building every day across big tech companies like Facebook, Netflix, Salesforce, and all that stuff. But really excited to share those learnings with you.
Yeah, man. One thing I wanted to talk about was, the Jobs Act of 2012 really revolutionized this space for people, and giving every day. Well, I'll say every day, giving a mass amount of people the ability to get exposure to these types of private placements is just incredible. I think that was a huge push. And I don't know if it was Obama's administration's goal to do that, but when they did, it happened in the real estate space. I think that obviously helped some private equity, maybe helped some startups, but it really, really revolutionized the real estate space. That might have been even an afterthought. And now this huge industry has been created, and you have definitely positioned yourself in that industry very well. So tell us a little bit about your business model, what you do on a regular basis, and how you help those W-2 investors get exposure to vetted great sponsors, man.
Yeah, and thanks for the opportunity. Completely agree on the commentary about the Jobs Act. This whole space has emerged in the last decade.
Yeah.
So in summary, Madison Investing is the company that I founded with my co-founder. Started off on nights and weekends, as a passive investor while I was still leading the loan origination teams at the biggest fix and flip lender in the country at Lending Home. So now, we have hundreds of people in this group. And what we basically do is we go out, and our goal is to de-risk this intimidating, scary, and frankly, occasionally risky notion of going and investing in private real estate deals or syndications. I'd like to think that everyone out there who is saying they have the quote unquote great deal is as integrity driven as Logan Freeman or as Spencer Hilligoss. Unfortunately, that's just not the case. And so our goal is to look at the 3-prong structure, which I didn't come up with this high level framework. Someone far smarter than I did came up with it before me, but we have tailored it, deepened it, and put some structure and rigor behind it, which is a great real estate decision is made and vetted by looking at the operator or the team, the market, and the economics of the deal, the business plan. And that's it, right? I mean, everyone talks about that. Everyone should be hopefully making great decisions about investing that way. So what we do is a bunch of stuff behind the scenes operationally, which we don't have to go into here now, but basically saying we vet the who heavily over
Absolutely.
a long period of time, minimum 3 to 6 months. And there's a lot of rigor that goes into that. On top of the fact that I always like to mention and disclose that I'm a registered securities professional now. So that also means that, I can literally sit here and at least, tell folks these deals have good people, as in no financial crimes involved in their track record,
right?
Clean money. So there's nothing shady going on. So everyone involved, the dozens or hundreds of people involved, whether it's multifamily deals and people are investing in multifamily, buying a piece of a large apartment community to get the cash flow from that and some upside at the end, or a self-storage facility. So, our primary focus right now rather is self-storage. And so we're doing a lot of that right now.
That's excellent. I keep talking to people about, hey, because I get the question a lot, Spencer, is like, what makes you guys different? And, I take that question very seriously. If I haven't done a good enough job telling you or showing you what I do different, then that's on me. But some folks don't digest every piece of content that I put out there, right? And so having a strong answer to that is, I relay it back to horse racing. Look for the jockey, not the horse. I mean, our horse, a lot of times in this industry, is very similar to other people's horses, right? It's commercial real estate, whether that be multifamily, self-storage, office. Obviously there's asset classes inside of commercial real estate, and there's geographical locations that you have to get, obviously, frankly, really comfortable with. But at the end of the day, it's bricks or it's stucco and it's income streams. Then it becomes who is actually operating the real estate. One big push for us is weekly to show people, hey, what is the difference between being a real estate investor and being in the business of real estate investing? Spencer, you are in the business of real estate investing. You offer value by doing all of the research and making sure that there's clean money, but also the business plan is rock solid and the operators are rock solid. And so I think a lot of folks that I reach out to are like, hey, should I be active? Should I be passive? And I'm like, well, let's talk about, what time you have, what knowledge you have, relationships, experience that you might have. But then also do you want to operate real estate? So what I'm trying to show people is what I do on a regular basis is rebuilding walls, is taking fridges up the stairs, is, dealing with tenants, toilets, trash, all of that. That's on my regular plate of things to necessarily do. And not everybody wants to do that. And that's okay. Right. And so I think there's a big misnomer out there that, everybody has heard about the landlord that has had a terrible experience with a single family home. And that's like their extent of their knowledge of real estate investing. And frankly, like we mentioned, the Jobs Act of 2012 broadened that horizon. So
can I bite on that for a second?
Absolutely.
So just this last week, we finally closed on a selling of 5 single family homes.
Yep.
And these were rentals we bought turnkey, and they were cash flowing fine. I think this is a helpful and timely example for folks, and it's brief. That was the second kind of serious quote unquote passive investment that we made. We meaning my co-founder and wife. And the first was a duplex locally here in the Bay Area. We overpaid for it. We still have it now. We're going to hang on to it because it appreciates. The cash flow is $200 a month for buying it $430,000. That is not a cash flow smart investment. The second one that we bought was over a series of time, single family turnkeys in Kansas City. I love the market still. Don't take that as an indication of leaving the market. I like that market. But I would say that it's just that they were semi-passive. And that's with a property manager.
Absolutely.
And so that was purely administrative decision, by the way, guys. I think a lot of times a piece of advice I wish I had gotten when I was first devouring content and podcasts out there was like, I'd hear one podcast and immediately say, ooh, single family rentals, I'm going to do that all the way. And that is not my message either. Please don't grab onto what I just said and say, leave single family.
Right.
Frankly, single family is probably supposed to crush it for the next year and a half. So Absolutely. just like always think about the message here is, think about how much time that you want to commit to this thing. Just like that. I mean, like that's a critically important piece of advice. We didn't want to spend any time answering phone calls or discussing what is the repair dollar amount threshold on a given property out in Kansas City for a C-class turnkey property that was supposed to be turnkey.
Sure.
And so that's why we sold those things. And so we're leaning more into purely, truly passive investments as limited partners, but also we're still, of course, running Madison Investing, which is
Yes.
helping other people invest in these things too for multifamily and storage. So the key takeaway there is, if I had to tie a bow around it, is that when folks reach out and they ask, what should I do? I can't answer that for them unless I get more info, right?
Right.
And they can answer that for themselves. But I can say this: it's an and, it's not an or. And it's an and. You know,
Yes.
great investing is an and. It doesn't mean you myopically go say, okay, I'm out of single family, I'm all in on industrial, or I'm all in on retail, or I'm all in. You're going to eventually want to have a portfolio mindset, and this diversification is still a good thing. And so I just like to mention that for folks, because not only was it timely, but man, it's just easy to get distracted. Shiny object syndrome is real. And folks want to think about how much time do they want to put into whatever investments they're about to go make.
Absolutely, man. You know, I've been studying Charlie Munger every single morning. And, you know, what one overarching theme is, if the only tool that you have in your toolbox is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Yes. And, you know, frankly, early on in my career, you know, I only had one option to help people in. And now it's like, hey, I need to learn way more about you, your goals, your situation, before I can give you any advice. And that, frankly, I think upsets some people, but I'm not just going to give them a, you know, hey, here's what you should do, you know, type of answer. I need to understand where you're coming from, where you want to go, how fast you want to get there. Then we can start to really dial that in. And I know that you have studied sales extensively, and it's more of a consultative approach. It's time heavy, and I'm willing to do that with the right people, but I'm not willing to just throw them, you know, an overarching answer to some question that, you know, has so many different variables to think about. So I think that's great advice.
Completely. I mean, even just, I know that you and I are both very active on LinkedIn, amongst other social media platforms, but I got a question from a guy, seemed like a capable, smart person, but I didn't know him, as a stranger, like many of those cold messages that we get. Sure. But he asked, hey, I'm getting into multifamily. What advice do you have for me?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, brother. I don't really even know how to respond to that.
Yeah, I can't.
I don't know who you are. I don't know what you've done. I don't know what you know. So it's an interesting challenge.
Yeah.
But
what I always try to point people to is like, hey, go listen to one of the 70 podcasts that I've been on, and then ask me that question, because you won't have the same question.
Yeah. And I used to personally, like, I didn't get this, and shame on me for not getting this years ago. You know, you reach out to someone, you probably heard them on a podcast, maybe you saw them on a show or something, and you're like, man, you look up to them and you want to ask them that really important question. You get the courage to go ask them. You ask them the question, and they basically do like a redirect to a piece of their content.
Yep.
And I used to think, oh, how dare they?
Right.
And man, do I get that now, because it's me sitting here telling my story again. Logan sitting there telling his story again. It comes from a place of just, you want to be available as a real human being to give good advice to people at some point.
Absolutely.
But you told that story. There's one best version of that story told, and hopefully people can take something from that on a different podcast anyways. So
yeah.
Anyways, I know we're going down a slightly different path, but yeah, it's a good one.
So this is where I wanted to ask you, obviously there's been a lot of different changes in the commercial real estate space the last 12 months. It feels now to me that there's a perfect storm brewing for commercial real estate. And my thought process is, because of price to earnings ratio with the Dow, with the S&P, is because of new administration, is because of all of these different, what I'll call tailwinds for commercial real estate, and how it's held up during the last 12 months. Seems to be like this perfect storm of, people are starting to get it, and they're like, okay, I'm willing to take a look at something else other than the stock market. But, there's a lot of things that go into that, right? And keeping up with all of those current opportunities, trends, can obviously be a big challenge. I know you read a lot, you take in a lot of information, but how do you overcome that challenge, filter through the noise, and actually get down to making sound investment decisions? Like, what's your process to go along that whole, journey?
That's the question, not just for business, but for life, right?
Yeah.
Like, we are just bombarded with information these days. So how do you parse it out? And so for me, frameworking, frameworking is something that sounds very ethereal, but I'll make it very specific for folks. When I was working in tech companies, particularly the early stage, like A series tech companies, I felt incredibly outclassed, just to be candid. When I first got there, I'm a University of Colorado student. I was not a great student. I was a
Sure.
snowboarder. But by the time I got to tech companies, I found my work ethic. But I was up against people who were straight up Harvard, Stanford,
Absolutely,
Yale badasses, and so I felt academically completely outclassed, which wasn't a good feeling at first, but that's how you grow. And so what I saw them doing in a tech environment, just to give this brief context, was you don't have time on your side. You have to go fast, but you also have to execute with precision, make great decisions, and you have to do that at speed.
Sure.
So you framework, and by frameworking, that's a simple way of saying another high level one that we just talked about a moment ago, Logan, was like look at the team, look at the market, and look at the deal, look at the business plan. That's the three pillars. However, we take it pretty nerdy and many layers down in each of those. So I make a great deal by literally, I'm looking at a spreadsheet that I can open up right now and have like the 5 buckets of things and question types that I want to get answers to. If I'm about to go work with a new sponsor team, if I'm going to join the general partnership team, or I'm purely just going to work with them as a placement agent, or depending on the role that I'm going to play in an upcoming real estate transaction that could be a very large fund or something. I'm gonna go through these vetting criteria and take a look at the who. Just that alone, we have 5 different framework buckets that we look at. So we look at we look at the team within that management team. Do they get along? Do they have a track record working together? Are they going to divorce each other within a 3-year period on a 5-year goal, and the deal explodes? Are they putting money into the deal at a bare minimum of 5 to 10% of the equity?
Absolutely.
All of these things. So you got to framework out, and we have 5 different big buckets of things that we look at, including values. Frankly, I proactively bring that up because oftentimes people think, yes, real estate's all about the numbers, but you know what? Numbers can be manipulated.
Yes, they can.
And I think like IRR is a great example of that, and so what really matters here, can you trust the jockey? Just like you said, Logan, are you capable of finding out and vetting, does this person mean what they say? And frankly, this is going to be as corny as can be, and I'm probably going to lose some people out there that are purely quantitative and they only see the world in numbers, which ain't me. I'm good on them, but I don't need to necessarily look at it that way. I think you have to find people that just care more.
Yeah.
You got to find people that care more. And if you're not good at vetting that out, you're probably going to end up either passively or actively in a deal with someone else who's just checked out. A 3-cycle real estate sponsor who doesn't give a crap is not going to be a person I prefer to have my capital with.
Yep.
And so they've fought their battles, man.
That's right. Lifers. We call them lifers,
and good on them,
That's right.
Seriously, good on them. I'm so impressed with what they've accomplished. At the same time, man, I just can't handle another diatribe about people saying that they only invest with 3-cycle sponsors, because I want nothing to do with that.
Right.
They're checked out.
Yeah. There's an interesting, I think, idea here, and it goes back to mental models. And that's kind of what I've been studying a lot about, is different types of mental models to put this frameworking process in place, right? I used to call them filtering processes, but really it's a mental model where you can take a piece of data and then think about it in a certain way that's been proven to be successful in the past that will help you make better decisions. And, Charlie Munger talks about, having a multidisciplinary approach, using a lattice work of mental models to create value in thinking at the level of market, a price, like what is the market willing to pay, and looking at it from a discount from the intrinsic value that it actually creates. And that's where kind of our investment thesis comes into play, is like, I don't care what, Joe is willing to pay for the property. Here's the intrinsic value based off of the cash flows of this investment opportunity. This is what we're willing to pay. And we're always looking for that discount, right? Howard Marks talks about the exact same thing. And Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett and Howard Marks have all done this very well for a long period of time, but it takes patience, it takes discipline, and it takes temperance. And they all talk about those 3 different things. And so, I always look back to the giants, trying to figure out, how do I build this business the right way? And a piece of that is just go learn about what other folks have done, and then create that same model for your own specific niche, which for us is obviously Kansas City. But, long story short, I love that because it's like, no matter what's going on in the world, you have your framework. And if it doesn't fit through that framework, I don't have time to vet this more because it doesn't hit the first three qualities that we need to have. So, and I love that you said values too, man. I think that's a big piece that it's an intangible that, folks really aren't talking about, right? It's everybody, you hear population growth, job growth, unemployment, all of that stuff. That's important. But again, values is so important. How's the team get together? I love that. So I'm curious, is that an interpersonal skill that you have developed by leading, large tech teams, or like, how do you framework that values piece into the equation?
Yeah, well, I appreciate you kind of biting on that,
Yeah.
And by the way, I think if you don't hear someone ever talk about that, it doesn't necessarily mean that they don't have integrity. It just means that they're maybe not comfortable bringing it up in a way that is pragmatic,
Yeah, sure.
But to me, a lot of that was honed by hiring hundreds of people over the course of years, over 13 years. And so when you're scaling these organizations, you have to find out, just literally, what are the decisions someone has made in the past that didn't always go great?
That's right.
And frankly, the most important part of that question is the follow-up question, which is, how did you get through it? What did you learn from it? And if they learn nothing from it, well, then that's a pretty big red flag.
Yeah.
And so that's the kind of stuff you're looking for. It doesn't necessarily mean real estate only.
Right.
I think some of the biggest, most incredible learnings in life come from the most absolutely brutally crushing things that have happened in corporate career or in different entrepreneurship ventures, right? And so like, that's the kind of stuff I love to hear about. And it's hard to hear it.
Sure.
And same goes from when I've shared very challenging stories from my own career of like, man, one of my wake up moments from my W-2 career was like, early stage tech company, thankful to still have equity in it. I bet they're going to have a big exit at some point. Fingers crossed. But I was working 80, 100 hours a week in an office, not seeing my infant son. And then like the day that I realized I was missing it, I was like, this has to change.
Yeah.
And so, like the examples I've heard in answer to these questions with folks are very telling, because when people don't necessarily, when they dodge that question, I run.
Sure.
Perfect people are not people I want to deal with.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Because they don't exist, and people
That's
that think
right.
they are not only deluded, they are dangerous.
Yes.
And so, I think it's those learnings on values are immense, and they're the ones that people need to think about. If they're investing in a passive investment, this is a 5-year minimum hold. Like
Absolutely.
5 years is longer than college. Yeah, you're building a friend here, and so
Absolutely.
I hope you're actual friends with them, because you're stuck with them. And I think I encourage people to like lean into the discomfort of talking about what you might formerly have thought of as squishy. And IRR can be pretty damn squishy too. So just change a few decimals and change a few numbers in there, and you'll be surprised what happens on a spreadsheet.
Absolutely. So, yeah. This is an interesting point, and we could spend so much time talking about things. What I wanted to give people was an idea into the way that your brain works. And we'll touch on that here in a second. But the big piece here is really understanding the fact that you're going to get a feeling when you're talking to people. And a feeling is good. You need to dive into what that feeling is. They should be able to talk intelligently, but perfection is impossible. What we strive for is excellence. What you have to look for is when that perfection or when that excellence falls short, what happens? How fast does it get fixed? How fast do you learn about it? And what do they do in regards to that? And that's where I've started to really value people's relationships and their integrity and their character is when it does go wrong or not how we set it out to be from day one. What do you do? And that's a good question that I always like in hiring, because we are hiring people left and right now, but also in real estate deals. Tell me about a time where your business plan did not go as planned, and what did you do? And that's a good question that I love to hear. And, frankly, I love people asking that because I have so many stories to talk about on that front, right?
Lots of fodder for that one.
Absolutely.
I know we're short on time, but like the one thing I was going to mention, which has probably become like, it's a theme that people have now told me is incredibly helpful for them. Talk about learnings. This is very brief. like a while back, I don't know if you saw this one, Logan, but like I posted this notion of like the boomerang investor. It was like a brief story of the boomerang investor. And they talk about failures and learnings that lead to great things.
Yep.
We now have probably at least 6 people, real people, in our passive investing group. And they are full-time W-2 professional badasses making, 200 minimum 200,000 individually per year. They go out, and this is a few years ago, they went out and said, wow, man, real estate, I'm finally going to get into this thing. And they dumped a bunch of money into their 401k. They eventually realized, wait, I should probably be doing more. My 401k is not going to be accessible for 30 years, yada, yada. They get the bug. They did what you and I have done, and they devour podcasts, they go bigger pockets, all that stuff. Eventually, they don't think passive investing is the fit for them, because they think I can get more by doing it myself. And the learning that they go through is pretty damn painful usually. And it's a little different for all 6 of these people that are in our group right now. They go out and they try to do, BRRRR projects remotely. I only know one guy in our group, to credit to him, I'll leave him anonymous, who actually still does that and somehow makes that work and passively invests. But the other folks, they go out and try to be active real estate investors while working full time. They burn money, they burn dozens and hundreds of hours, and then they come back eventually, literally 2 years later plus, and they say, you know what, maybe I should be doing this passive investing thing. And then they're out money, they're out time, and so like I look at that like what is a learning that is failing forward in some ways, but also avoidable, because you can learn from the mistakes of others.
Absolutely.
And that's the tale that I wanted to share with people here. If they're still like early in that journey, and you're like, you've never invested a single dollar into real estate necessarily, or passively invested or semi-passive invested in a rental, just remember you can learn from the mistakes of others, and try to build that self-awareness before you decide to go running down a path.
Spoken like a true investor and business owner. Spencer, how can folks find you, reach out to you, learn more about what you're doing at Madison?
Yeah, thanks so much again for having me, Logan. So you can find out more about us at MadisonInvesting.com, and just sign up for our account or platform there. You can also go to LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn, as Logan knows. So on daily posts, you can just follow me there. Please connect. I'm not going to bite. If you reach out, I'll be happy to chat with you.
Yeah, this has been great, Spencer. And guys, this is Logan Freeman with the LiveFree Investors Podcast, where I interview investors and business owners who share investment advice, so you too can live free. For more insights and ideas on how you can live free, connect with myself and Spencer on LinkedIn today. Head over to MadisonInvesting.com. He has an incredible newsletter that I highly recommend everybody go take a look at. Spencer, thanks again for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you, Logan. Really an honor, man.
Until next time, guys, live free.